first of all, I think to recap, it's okay to make mistakes, right? It's perfectly fine. But what is it that you can learn from the mistakes makes it even more important. And once you start doing this over and over again, then in your mind also you know what is you start. So again, as humans, we have our own lenses, right? Our own perspective of how the world works, right? And those lenses are something that if you really want to clean them, the only way to clean them is by understanding the mistakes that you have done from your past, the things that were blind spots to you, basis which you took some decisions that were wrong on overall, and then basically evolving your cleaning up those lenses so that you see the world more clearly.
Welcome to another episode of the Mitti Ke Rang podcast, and I wish all the listeners a very happy Independence Day. Though I believe the podcast will be out in the next couple of days, but since we are recording on the 15th of August, I wish you a very happy Independence Day. And today we have Mr. Jasjit Singh with us. Welcome, Jasjit, to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you? Thanks for inviting me over to this event.
I am doing great, and
And
it's an
happy
absolute pleasure.
Independence, happy Independence Day to you as well.
Thank you. Happy Independence Day to you too. So, I have a couple of things outlined in my mind which I want to talk to you today specifically about. A lot of them being circled around entrepreneurship, startup, and the whole culture that the country is now been evolving with. So, but first, I would like to know about you, what your background has been, and how did you end up in this specific field? So, how has your college life been, and were your ambitions a bit different back then?
Ah, so college, whenever you talk about college, right, it brings in very sweet memories about want to change the world, do a lot of things and say stuff like that. But I think my college life, to be honest, I was more into semi-serious kind of a guy who did some fun stuff as well, but also focused on the curriculum and academia and the cultural events and things like that. So for me, I think my first uh, in a in a pursuit of doing something different, I was the one who started. Our college didn't had a website, so I am from YMCA, Institute of Engineering, Faridabad. At that point of time, the college didn't had a website, right? So one of my seniors, he approached me and said, yeah, could do something about it, right? Like you are in IT. Ours was the first batch in IT in our college, so you are in IT. Why don't you do something about it? I said, okay. So that is where I actually started learning HTML, JavaScript, and things like that from there. And that is where I did the first thing, and I saw, right, and I saw it in people's eyes that they would look up to me and say, wow, he has done something about college. So that was good. I that got me enough visibility to kind of get some credibility in the college, and hence I used that to also start working with our professors to write research papers. So I was actually really fortunate because I got into one of our professors' research, and she published a lot of papers, and I also published 4 or 5 of them, out of which only one got published, but that was something that was really really interesting for me, and that got me to move into like understanding the why part of whatever I do. Why are so more of analytical thinking, more of understanding the pain points and how do you bring out those pain points. So that was really interesting, and actually, like I was always not too studious. So I remember I one time played the role of training and placement officer when I called several companies on his behalf, talking like as though I am a TPO, and I would bring it and make appointments, get them to the office, and then tell the TPO that, by the way, this company is here to meet you. So it was crazy, but it was fun.
So,
Yeah,
isn't it
yeah.
cool, like imagining you build the first website of the college?
Yeah, no, it was a very proud moment for me. I think I learned a lot in that matter, in that initiative. But I think for me, it was not more about the publicity and the thing that it got me, but for me it was actually that I wanted to make a change and bring impact, right? So that is where this was my BTech. The second round, when I did 2 years in TCS in a research lab over there, and after that again I got more interested in understanding how humans interact with technology, and that is where I then went to Georgia Tech for my master's in human computer interaction. So it was a cross disciplinary course in psychology, design, architecture, computing. So amazing coursework, and really thoroughly enjoyed it over there. Like it is a different world altogether, right? For me, this was my first time actually going out of the home and starting going directly to US. It was a day to night kind of a change. But I think I learned a lot from how not only we as a computing oriented people, like we see technology, right? But there are lots of aspects of the interactions that we miss out, and that is where my eyes open to how a human psychology comes into how the human interacts with interfaces, interacts with technology, how systems can be designed in terms of an architecture to give that immersive or 360-degree experience. We actually did Willy Wonka and Chocolate Factory on a tabletop. So you had different producers, you would place it on the tabletop at different times. It would spin out a new story every time that you did, basis where you placed in that space. So those kind of things actually taught me that it's not just about technology, it is about the human element of how that technology is used, and that itself is a very powerful paradigm in how do you bring about change in human lives. I think that is where I really learned about understanding the human pain points. How do you build things around it? How do you think at scale? And that's my college life. So really, I really loved my college life. I wish I could do another stint. Probably I'll do at some point in time, but let's see then.
So just coming a bit off topic as you talk about the tech and human interaction. So talking about AI. So do you think AI, there are two schools of thought around AI. One is it will take over jobs and one is it will actually create jobs. So do you think AI, it has a possibility of taking over jobs, specifically the non-skilled jobs in the future?
So I think what you'll have to understand, what is AI, what is ML, right? AI ML is a means of solving a problem, right? Does that mean the problems will go away forever? Like human evolution is all about um, learning more things around, like expanding the horizon, bringing in that is also brings in a lot of opportunity, lot of problems to solve. So the problems are here to stay, right? If problems are not there, you probably will have a really boring life. So that's the human niche of understanding more about how what else can be done to make life more comfortable, more uh, easy. And that brings in a lot of expectations, that brings in a lot of problems, that brings in a lot of opportunities. So these problems are here to stay, right? So that means that now there were some means in which these problems were solved, right? But now these means will change over time, right? So earlier it was manual, then things got automated, now you have predictive, right? So this is just an evolution. The problems continue. In fact, they will grow even more because your expectation of how things would work in the future will grow, right? So nothing is going away. Human in terms of jobs, I think more of us in the future will be more entrepreneurs than someone who is doing a 9 to 5 kind of a job, and being more passionate about work. I think that is something that will drastically change as new generation comes into the picture. And we already see that, right? Like there are a lot of people who are really energetic, a lot of people coming in from colleges who are trying out different stuff. We couldn't even imagine, right? We couldn't even think of like starting a new thing right out of college, right? Our parents would actually beat us out of the thing and say that, come on, why are you not serious about your career? Do some job and things like that, right? So the whole evolution of human mind is moving in that direction. And over a period of time, you'll see a lot of people trying to try different things, learn from them, iterate. And ML, in my mind, is a medium through which you can do it faster, right? So either you predict, either you automate, or you classify. These are the three sets of problems that you solve with ML, right, or AI. So all these sets of are tools that enable you to try out new things. So instead of being scared of it, I think we can use this as an opportunity to empower a whole generation to think more about how can we make impact in human lives.
Right. So just upskilling as humans continue to
Yes.
right. So
It's a natural evolution of human mind, right? It's a
right.
natural evolution where things become more and more into our lives, and we also adapt. That adaptation raises the expectations of humans. That also raises a lot of understanding about things that you know about, things you don't know, and hence you start exploring it even further. So this is like, it's a natural evolution, but of late, because of technology, this evolution has accelerated. That's it. So instead of, so anywhere like that happens, right? At any point of time, if there are a lot of unknowns, humans do get scared, right?
Mhm.
So all we need to do is take this learning and kind of evolve the things that you know, things that you don't know, and use technology to decipher the things that you don't know, rather than being
Right.
scared.
And you rightly said, as problems keep on coming, it is something which won't stop,
Yes.
and humans will be there to just take out the solutions to all the problems. Where there's a problem, there's always a solution.
Yes.
Right. So, what now I would like to know is, how did you land up from a BTech guy to someone being interested in entrepreneurship and being a mentor to the startups?
In my mind, I think this change happened like after I came back to India. So initially, like I was in BlackBerry in Bay Area. I worked there for about 3 or 4 years, and that also was a good learning experience for me. But then I wanted to come back to India, and when I started looking for jobs, it was actually really scary, right? I am talking about 2008, 2009. I actually went to a couple of interviews, and I was actually literally shattered, right? The questions that people were asking, that I did MS in HCI, right? It is about usability testing. It is about user research, understanding the user pain points. And because I knew a lot of technology, I could also code, and that was an advantage, right? And which was very well appreciated in the Bay Area. But when I came over here, people were like, what does HCI do, right? What do you do? Can you write HTML? Can you write code? And like, I actually ran off one of the interviews while I was doing the interview. I said, just in right in the middle, I said, is there a washroom? I ran away. I couldn't take it, and it was really bad. So back then, I was actually really fortunate. There was a company called Nimbus. They were instant messaging, and before the pre-WhatsApp world, and that startup was planning to move base to India because a lot of the user base was in South Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and it was a Dutch company, and they had headquarters in Buenos Aires. So they wanted to move head office to India, and that was my opportunity, wherein I actually was one of the early people into this startup world in India, especially in Delhi NCR. Like Bangalore had just started, Flipkarts had just started, so it was growing in Bangalore, but in Delhi there was hardly anything. So, but this was my opportunity. I think for the next 3 or 4 years, I think over there I learned more about how agile startups can be, and what are the pain points that a typical growth. So I'll tell you about Nimbus, right? It was a very amazing growth story, right? Uh, at that point of time, we had like a 150 million user base in the South Asia and Middle East, right? And that time, like people not that much on online, and especially on Android and things like that. So things were like, in that mindset, we were actually the king, right? So over there, I actually saw how agile, how scale works when it comes to startups, and that is where I learned a lot from my mistakes, learned a lot from people who were already there in the system. And no, I think that was one experience that really taught me that one is your stable ship, which was BlackBerry at that point of time. It was right till I left, things were very stable, and I could have continued for maybe a couple of years and then moved into somewhere in the Bay Area. But since I wanted to come back, this was my opportunity to kind of see how so small startups grow into a big startup. They still, so the startup mentality doesn't go away, right? The pace of work, the pace of experimentation doesn't go away. And from there, I think I got something like you taste blood, right? So something like that. It was something really fascinating, and that is where I moved around in the startup world, but I still, since I wanted to be at home as well, so I moved around startups inside the Delhi NCR area, learned a lot. I think I remember when I joined MobiQuick, there were hardly any PM over there, and it was fascinating, right? How could you scale a product from where it is to where it was at that point of time, without a proper product team and things like that. But I think that is where I learned a lot from Bipin and other people in the team. That how do you structure, even in chaos, how do you see patterns, how do you make sense of it all, and not get overwhelmed with things, right? I think one of the things that startups have taught me over years is that there will always be situations, there will always be circumstances, there will always be adversaries, but all you need to do is focus on what is that right thing to do for your customers, what is that problem that you're trying to solve, see it clearly, right? First is seeing the problems clearly, so that you have a plan of action, and then put your head down, focus, and deliver. Because there will always be fire everywhere. What you need to do is focus on the right problems to solve, deliver, see results, iterate, and keep that loop learning going. And that is where I think I learned a lot in how these startups have evolved over time. Basically, doubling down on bets that work and removing the bets that didn't work. So I think that has been a great learning experience for me in the India ecosystem.
Right. So we talk about growth a lot in the entrepreneurial sector and in general too. We consider it personal growth or professional growth. So what is growth according to you? Like if a budding startup comes to you, what definition of growth would you tell to them?
So I think in my mind, growth has a very deep meaning. Growth is not about it's not just about numbers of how much revenue can you get, what is the top line, what is the bottom line, what is the active user base, what is the GMV. These are the outcomes of understanding what growth means for you. In all, what I've seen is growth is in terms of understanding your knowledge of the user, right? Understanding your users. So if you know 10%, you will do certain actions in a way you would do, right? If you know 20%, you would probably change your whole thought process and do something different. If you know 30%, that is where the game changes to completely different, right? And as you grow, that is where your real bets are. How closer are you to the user? How do you understand? The more you know, the more growth it is for you, and outcomes are these, like you increase revenue, you increase GMV, you increase other matrices that are important to your business. But the core is how well do you understand your users, how well are you able to communicate with them through your products, how well are you able to adapt to their aspirations, and how well are you able to evolve with them. Because as and when you offer products and services, the evolution of human mind is they see it as standard stuff. Now their aspirations are even higher, right? But if your products doesn't match, then you're actually losing out. And that is where, like, if you look big companies like, for example, Nokia, BlackBerry, that is where it stopped, right? And if you would have evolved your understanding of users as you move forward, there is no way in the world the people your competition could have caught, right? So that connect is the more you know, the more your growth is. So that is where I would say that, in terms of not looking in terms of revenue or your core matrices, growth in my mind is understanding your user. How well do you know them?
Right. Like you spoke about being consumer centric. So I
Yeah.
think Amazon is one company I would specifically like to point out who has always been very consumer centric and considerate. And that's how
Yeah.
they've been sustainable in the long run.
Yes. Yes. No, absolutely. I think it's about like in a day of a user or a person, what impact can you generate so that it makes his life easy, right? And if you look at Amazon, the story of Amazon, right from the Prime videos to Alexa to Echo to everything, right? You are trying to make his life simple in a day, right? And how do you kind of what are your aspirations? Can those aspirations be translated into sales and services? How quickly can that be done? Can you meet those expectations and promise them and meet them, right? So that is where this evolution will continue, right? As long as you're closer to the users and you are kind of influencing the way users will respond.
Right. So, talking about sustainability in the long term, so a lot of companies or startups start great with great numbers, with great ideas, with great planning, but eventually they become less relevant with time. So, what is the key to be relevant and sustainable in the long run?
So I think everything starts with a vision, right? What happens is sometimes we think of an opportunity and we think in short to medium term that okay, this is an opportunity, this is a problem which I can see, I'll solve it, and hence I will be successful to a certain rate.
Right.
That will allow me to either raise more funds or do something about it, right? But that is where I think I usually advise people that whenever you're thinking of even maybe putting a button there, can you think of what impact that button would have in 5 years down the road? Can you look at it from that point of view? Because then it changes a lot of perspective, right? What happens is that from a technology and product, we look things at a limited time frame, that next 2 years I want to do this. But if you ask someone that what will happen in the next 5 years, then probably people are a little bit lost that what needs to happen, because they're too focused on now, right? Focus on now is good, but you should also have some kind of a north star or vision that you want to take, right? And vision starts with defining what that consumer problem is, right? What is that need that you want to solve? Needs are independent of any of the product solution products or businesses that you have built on. These products will evolve, business models will evolve, things will change, technology will change, but the core needs will be something that is same, right? For example, you need to maybe study. So study, previously it was actual going into the school and doing all that stuff. Everything is online now, right? Tomorrow it could be something else, but the no need hasn't changed. So
Right.
similarly, you need to understand what is your core proposition or the core need that you're trying to solve, right? How are you solving now? How could you be solving this in the future? And what all can it evolve? So what happens is usually the I've seen in successful startups and successful companies is once they reach a critical mass, they also look at how else they can disrupt the area around themselves, right? So again, they start from feature set to a product to a platform to a ecosystem. So now you can actually map all the various products that you see around you. Like for example, Amazon has become an ecosystem. So that's the evolution of products that has been. Sometimes people think in terms of feature, they reach product and they'll drop off, right? And that is where there is not enough traction. You've not solved all the customer pain points. People don't see value. They don't come back to your platform, right? There was so a lot of problems in understanding and using our products. There was no customer support. So all those things contribute into the evolution, right? If you've done things right from a feature set to a product, then for you it becomes very simple to understand that how can you make this product into a platform where you can offer bunch of services or products that help the user in living his life. And then can you be a leader in your ecosystem and also influence others to participate in that, right? So that's how the whole paradigm of things work. And over there, I think it comes back to the core need, and that is where that whole evolution will sustain.
Right. So evolving with time and again being consumer centric, understanding the
Yes,
needs. And like you said, the needs remain same, but the method or technique of providing the service could change over time.
absolutely.
So, talking about the current situation, we are in such unprecedented times. We do not know what's in plate for us ahead of this. So, how do you visualize the post-COVID strategies, and what parameters would or factors would change while a startup is doing market research? What should they consider in the post-COVID era?
So I think COVID is basically like if I were an entrepreneur in this environment, right? I would. There are two ways to look at it, right? It can either break or it can either make your business.
Right.
Because if you are a platform that is contactless, that offers products and services that can be used without a physical interaction and things like that, then you're already one step ahead from the crowd, right? So I think let's maybe use that advantage to see how now behaviors are changing. So again, the core need is same. On top of it, you have behaviors. So now, have the behaviors evolved, right? If the lockdowns get removed, is that behavior sustaining, or is it coming back to the same normal, right? So again, that is where you need to understand what are the opportunities in those behaviors, on the behaviors that are sustaining, on the behaviors that are changing, and then have your product strategies aligned to that those behaviors, right? For example, like people are not going to office right now, so people wake up at say 9 or 8 in the morning, which earlier used to be 6, right? So that itself is a big opportunity for you, or things that you could design to kind of solve those customer pain points, that now people are waking up, they're sleeping late, and hence there is a 2 hour window where a lot of entertainment stuff could be pushed into the homes, right? So I think it's about every crisis is also an opportunity. It depend on your perspectives. Are you agile enough to change the ways of working or change the product strategy to be able to address that need for now and post the COVID scenario? Or are you basically too focused on the things that really matter, and you firmly believe that this is a temporary phase, and hence this is my opportunity wherein I can do a lot of work, and once the situation gets back to normal, can I will then go with a full force rather than doing a lot of things and trying out things, and hence that is it. The other thing is, I think product validation becomes very important in any phase, right? Irrespective of COVID, that is where you need to do that. So over here, I think at least at OLX, we've done a lot of virtual sessions with users to understand what is happening over there. But I think that is where one thing that really stood out in the Nimbus story was ambassadors. So can you basically use your social networks to be able to identify, recruit people, and talk to them, understand if they are in your core set, and can you address that? Because I think this is also a time where everyone shows a lot of empathy with people, and maybe you are in the right place and time to be able to leverage that and get feedback on your products more, right? So if someone comes to me and says that this is my product, would you want to give feedback? I definitely would give that, right?
Right.
So I think this is your time wherein people are also very empathetic, because everyone understands that how startups are facing this crisis, right? Everyone knows the ground realities, and if there is anything that people can help, they will help, but you need to be proactive about it. How do you leverage your network? How do you grow your network so that you can get appropriate feedback, so that you can iterate your products?
Right. And talking about the ambassadors or the reps you spoke
Yeah.
about, I think Tinder does amazing in terms of appointing campus reps or ambassadors.
Yeah.
And and most of the campus reps or ambassadors are actually students, because the active users are the students, and we are in constant touch with them, helping how to make the app better, how to particularly evolve it in the whole Delhi University campus. And they do give a lot of incentives, which is so, it has become the coolest gig on campus, and one of the incentive
Absolutely.
being this.
No, absolutely right. That's how it works, right? Because I think it is very difficult. So if they were to recruit people who did that, it will be very costly. It will be very you don't know how things would evolve, right? It is a big risk. But campus, for example, talking to people in campus, it's actually really empowering for them that you can get information from the ground, and people are enthusiastic about it, right?
Right.
And hence it also creates a brand awareness. So it's a double win kind of a thing, wherein you not only create your brand awareness with your target audience, but also get feedback so that you can evolve your things. So those kind of things really help, and these are low cost things, right? Definitely not something that you need millions of dollars of marketing budget.
Right. So, like previously in the starting of the podcast, pointed out how the whole entrepreneurial setup and starting up a venture or a company wouldn't have been possible, say, 10 years back or 20 years back. So, now with the newest development, we have the new education policy, which actually promotes vocational course, entrepreneurship, and coding since a very early age. So, what kind of possibilities do you think it will create for the country's entrepreneurial setup?
So honestly, I think everything is on steroids, right? Mm, I have a daughter, and she's just 4 years old, and the questions or the exposure that she has that I didn't had when I was even 10, right? So that is what we are talking about here, wherein everything is kind of the kind of exposure that we are giving to children, the kind of exposure that they kind of see their world in, immersed in technology and things like that. I think that is accelerating a lot of evolution of human mind, and that is what accelerating it. And uh, and when systems and policies are in tune with those changes, that is where the real impact could come, right? And very fortunate to have someone thinking about the future and kind of making those changes right away. And so, but again, the proof is in the pudding. How do we actually execute it on ground? How does it actually change? Because I think unfortunately, like sometimes, like most of them are actually check boxes, right?
Right.
So if it is just a checkbox, then probably it doesn't matter, right? In a longer run, we are doing the same stuff, not doing anything. It's just about the exams were held in a certain time frame. Now they are held in certain other time frame. Curriculum is similar. You've not solved any problem, right? So there nothing changes. But if we are actually serious about it and people actually execute this policy, then you see a lot of change in understanding. So again, when I was at school, I think till 11th, I didn't even know what is IIT, right? That is where I discovered and started working towards it, and learned a lot about it. But up till that was the exposure that we lived in, right? So, but now even 6 7 class students, they would know what IIT is, what are the various opportunities. In our times, it was, do you want to be a doctor, do you want to be an engineer, or a shopkeeper, right? Life was very simple. But now the after effects of this kind of educational policy, which also is very uh, forward looking when it comes to choices in terms of offerings that people can get into. And also it opens up a lot of opportunity in the education space, which, like, for the last 10 years, we've all been talking about this is the next big thing, next big thing, next big thing, especially because we have a lot of population and people think that you have a good demand, you create some products, throw it out in the market, and it will work, right? And I have seen startups after startups failing in education thing, because just because you don't have that kind of a mindset of the whole system, right? Hopefully now when people execute on the policies, then things should change. The ecosystem should change. The mindset of teachers, the mindset of users, of students, the mindset of parents would change, and that all in itself opens a lot of opportunity as a child grows from, say, the kindergarten to the high school to forward, right? So that is where the real opportunity is. But again, I would underline the fact the proof is in the pudding. If we really want our students to be the next age entrepreneurs, right, and our education policy wants to support it, if we are actually serious about it, I think the potential is enormous, right?
Right.
That is where we could actually make a lot of impact. But fingers crossed, let's see how things go.
Absolutely. You are very right in terms of saying that it actually depends on how it is implemented
Yeah.
and in what time frame it is implemented. Say it's next
Yes.
5 or 6 years, then we would see less of an impact. But if it's quick in implementation, we would actually see a large scale impact in the future leaders.
Yeah. And maybe even if it is next 6 years of change, but you will not impact the current generation, but the next generation will actually benefit from it. So
Right.
even then, in the worst case scenario, also we have done a lot of things for our future. So I think even then, if the main thing is on execution, you start working towards it, slow or fast, but you start working on it.
Right. I think on paper it looks really great and really appealing
Yeah.
to all the students and the people whoever is reading it. For example, when I was reading, I was so mad कि कुछ साल पहले आ जाती, it would have been good for me.
Imagine what I would have felt. What the hell?
Right. So it's actually crazy how we're evolving with time, and like you said, everything is on steroids.
Yes.
So now I would jump back to the learnings and the failures that you faced in life and what you've learned from them. So, what is the best advice that you've ever got, be it in personal life or professional life, that you would sum up in a 5 to 7 word presentation title?
I think one message that like stayed with me, right? Like this was one feedback that was given by my manager when I was at BlackBerry. She said, Jasjit, you are good, right? You're great in whatever you do. One thing that really sets you on fire is when you react to people, whatever they are saying, whatever they are doing. I think one thing that you should keep in mind is assume good intent, right? A lot of times what happens is that our mind, we are very imaginative, right? We think of scenarios, we think of how the other person would try the best to kind of harm our interest, harm us, right? We even with the slightest thing, even if it actually is not the intent, we get carried away, right? And
Right.
that is something that stayed with me and made me more aware of what the other persons are people are thinking, what are their circumstances, what how can I help in their circumstances. And that has built a lot of solid relationships that has helped me grow. So I think one thing that has stayed, and I would really like to, like, as much as we can follow, is always assume good intent, right? There is no harm. Worst case scenario, yes, the intent was bad, but even if the other person, like, he or she would see that it doesn't impact you, everything will be sorted on your own, and you can actually focus on your work, focus on things that matter, and focus and that also, I think, the element when you start doing this more often, then there is an element of humility in you, because what happens is that that is where you start forgetting and forgiving a lot, and that is where you understand, right, in bigger scheme of things, a lot of things don't actually matter, right? And
Right.
there are circumstances where you feel very calm, very responsible about your acts, and that really sets you apart from others, right? So it starts from assuming good intent to being humble about what you have achieved, because what you have achieved was in past, right? At this present, at this moment, you are here, right? What is it that you can do with your life at this point of time is the most important thing that matters at this moment in time, right? So those are two things that have really stayed with me. and it has helped me navigate a lot of problems, lot of downs, a lot of ups, a lot of crisis, a lot of situations where otherwise I would have overwhelmed. But it all of it didn't matter in a longer run, right? That's what I see myself like. If I see maybe in a longer run, will this impact? Probably not. Then why should I be worried? Right? So assume good intent, and that is where it starts. And then once you do it over and over again, you start becoming more humble, more calm, and then over a period of time, you start seeing things from a bigger perspective, and that really eases your mental health, and you become more comfortable with yourself.
Absolutely. And as you spoke about intent, it actually got me back to while I was talking to few of the guests who practice Buddhism. So even in Buddhism, they have this learning. So where they talk about how intent should be right, and all your actions
Yeah.
would reflect your intent.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And in my mind also, I think as like we can only retrospect, right? We can only see our past. And if you look at past, I think what consciously or unconsciously we are bringing our future to ourselves, right? So might as well choose a bigger, better future for you rather than thinking about things that pull you down, right? So that's what I usually tell people, but at least it helped me.
right. So in this whole cycle of being experiencing failure and success, so what has been your learning from the most harsh and the most the failures that would actually put you down, but instead they actually taught you something and lifted you up? What was that one specific learning?
No, I think I have had failures all through my career, right? Professional, personal, all fronts, right? I think one learning, if I would say, is that uh, it's okay to make mistakes, right? It's don't be so harsh on yourself. I think we humans think that we are the center of the universe and everything revolves around us, and we whatever we do is absolutely right, and whatever happening because of the other person. I think that is where we lose a lot of energy, time, effort, energy on trying to course correct, trying to mend a lot of things. But if you think about it, I think if those mistakes were not made, you would probably not learn. You would have not learned those lessons. You would have not been a better person now just because of those mistakes, right? And how do you understand one? So again, ignorance is something that can lose the benefit of a mistake, right? So you make mistakes, but don't ignore them, but understand what those mistakes are, acknowledge that yes, this was wrong, and then look at how can you how can you possibly improve yourself in the future, right? I think going back to the drawing board once in a while really sets the thing, right? So it's first of all, I think, to recap, it's okay to make mistakes, right? It's perfectly fine. But what is it that you can learn from that mistakes makes it even more important. And once you start doing this over and over again, then in your mind also, you know what is you start. So again, as humans, we have our own lenses, right? Our own perspective of how the world works, right? And those lenses are something that if you really want to clean them, the only way to clean them is by understanding the mistakes that you have done from your past, the things that were blind spots to you, basis which you took some decisions that were wrong on overall, and then basically evolving your cleaning up those lenses so that you see the world more clearly.
Right. So making mistakes and experiencing them actually gives us a reality check from which we need to learn, but not let it
Yes.
set in and move on then.
Yes. So don't let it bother you. I think as long as you're not letting it bother you, it's perfectly fine. Because you also need to introspect. You also need to acknowledge, but focus on what you could do from here rather than thinking about what I could have done differently in the past. So it is more forward looking than backward looking, because
Right.
whatever has happened now, you can't change it. So but what you can change is take the learning and impact the things on your future. So that is one thing that has really kind of, I've been through very bad times, very like things that overwhelmed people. I also got overwhelmed, but these are few things that really helped me to kind of pick up things and then start again.
Absolutely. I think there's a very strong message here which you give to all the listeners. And I'm pretty sure the listeners could have a great insight of this from this podcast. And definitely, it was a value adding, enriching podcast for me. And thank you so much, Jasjit, for being with us here today and for the time you've given us and for the great messages you shared.
Thanks, Mishika. I think I really enjoyed this. Right, I think the way you've been uh, the conversations one after the other. Right, I think it all. If you look again, like we at that point of time, I didn't see the whole thing, but now if you look at the hindsight, I think it was a very well done kind of a talk. Right, we were actually talking.
Right.
So good job with that.
Thank you so much.